It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Unwine.
Get up, stand up.
Oh, hello, everybody. My goodness, hello on the West Coast. Good afternoon on the East Coast. Oh, wow. Welcome to Igniting Change. We have a great show in store for you today. Let me tell you, the Supreme Court's at it again. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about who they're doing stuff to. But you know what? We did a little bit of a reversal of roles for this show. Barbara is with us, and it's my pleasure to bring up the host, the creator, the founder of Igniting Change, Barbara Arnwine. Barbara.
Hey, thanks, Daryl Jones. Everybody knows that Daryl Jones is our amazing co-host. He is the co-leader of the Transformative Justice Coalition, where he serves as chair of the board. He is also, everybody, renowned because he is the new president of the TJC Voter Fund. Wow, our C4. He is amazing. He does incredible work, and it is always my opportunity and pleasure to be on this show with him. Folks, this court. We're subject of our show today is going to be cruel and unjust. Yes, cruel and unjust. The hidden national agenda to exclude the rights of people with disabilities. And we have two amazing guests, and we're going to get to our guests, but we're going to start off by kicking off some words about this court. First of all, a whole lot of people are trying to figure out what is this court up to. I just want to point out to you that this court believes in what's called a unitary presidency, which means a unitary executive or what they call an imperial executive, where the president holds all power and is more mighty than the Congress and the courts. They believe this. They have given him unlimited authority, and in the Slaughter case, they reversed 50 years of precedence and said that he can fire at will, except for Lisa Cook and people who are on the federal board, which is the corporate sector cares too much about. So it's been weird, and we know that their hostility to the Voting Rights Act is absolutely imperative. And we saw, of course, in the Watson case, people were like, what? Amy Barrett wrote this decision yesterday that said that there was no federal statute governing and that has any authority over when states can receive their election ballots, and that the 5-day extension for the receipt of any election ballot that was postmarked prior to Election Day was totally proper. Now, remind yourselves that had nothing to do with the Voting Rights Act. They hate the Voting Rights Act, and I think that helped this case. But also, the case was just specious from the beginning. The court never should have allowed it. It had no basis in law to start with. So, Daryl, that's my review of those two cases. But they did more today, right? They came out with that birthright citizenship case.
Absolutely, Barbara. They did the right thing on birthright citizenship. Sometimes, I guess, logic and being straightforward and being real clear really is logic and being straightforward and being very clear about birthright citizenship. And so the court, I guess to their credit, got it right, what they should have gotten right, and that the rest of the country knew was the right thing to do. So I guess we'll give them some credit for that. But with that Watson decision, Barbara, and the mailing balloting and that decision overall, it bothered me because at its beginning, at its genesis, it came out of Mississippi. And I tried to understand why Mississippi and the RNC would be bringing this case. Why would Mississippi, the state of Mississippi, with its history, why would it be bringing this case? And it seemed like it was going to be a setup for the courts and for Mississippi to finally be able to get rid of ballots that were postmarked prior to the election, but received post-election. I suspect, Barbara, and I could be wrong, but I suspect that our voting rights friend Mark Elias, when he interpleaded into that case and got involved in this litigation, I think that changed the trajectory of what they were trying to set up. I don't know, But we like the outcome, but I think it was a setup from the beginning, and it got spoiled because of the intervention of the voting rights community. So, Robert,
Well, yeah, it's an interesting reality, but it was such a stupid case to begin with. The oral argument was horrific because there was basically nothing for them to talk about other than, wait a minute, everybody, the only statute they can point to was some civil war action. When we've had all these laws, early voting, they could not answer the court's questions about what does this mean for early voting? Is it illegal? Because it's not on election day. What does it mean for UCOVA, for the overseas voters? What are you saying? You saying that their late ballots can't be counted even though they're postmarked on time? And they kept saying to the court, well, you don't have to reach that issue. And people were like, how do you not reach that issue? You're saying that the statute says you can only count ballots by election day. So how in the world can you have these two big exceptions out there? And they could not answer it. They kept saying, oh, that's distinguishable. Oh, that's different. And the court said, I don't think so. But remember, Daryl, let's be very clear, people on Watson, that was not a unanimous decision. Please, we'll point that out, Daryl, and it was not somehow this was unanimous. The only shock in the whole decision was that Barrett wrote it. She was the most skeptical of the oral argument, but the big shock was that she was joined by the Chief Justice Roberts. He was not that good on the argument. He scared me during that argument because he was so adverse. But he sat down, and I think that it's called that backlash, all that smoke he's been getting because of the Calais decision, which was the worst thing this court did this term, one of the worst. And I think because of deportation of Haitians and killing temporary protective status, it's outrageous, and Amy should have shown up differently there. But in any event, there's so much to talk about, Daryl. We could talk about this court, folks. Yes, and we could talk about what they did in the FEC case, where they once again extended Citizens United, this whole corporatocracy where they just believe that corporate America should govern this nation. And this is totally out of the Curtis Yarvin theories, the imperial presidency, all of that stuff. They did it again in the FEC case. And the birthright citizenship case, give them some credit. They said the right thing. President was out of order. His executive order was out of order. They threw it out totally, did not give it any little credence. They did better than I thought they would have on my case. So that's good news. So let's get to our amazing show, Daryl. Let's bring up these guests. Oh, we got some good guests today, folks. You're in for a treat. You're in for a treat.
Absolutely, Barbara. Just wonderful guests we have with us. We have returning to Igniting Change because we can't get enough of her. She was born in Torrejon, Spain, and she's a strategist, an author, an activist, an instructor, project manager, connector, change maker, policy wonk. My goodness, what isn't Dara Baldwin? Dara, welcome back to Igniting Change.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you all. Peace and blessings to you both. Thank you for your wonderful work. Hello, everyone out there. I am healing and dealing, and I hope you are too.
All right now.
Dara is joining us, but she's fresh on her book tour, the Let's Walk About the Problem book tour. And it's actually starting in this summer. You got to get to Dara's website, www.darabaldwin.com, and be certain to get a copy of her book. It is just a phenomenal read, y'all. I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy it. We also have joining us, Barbara, Carolyn Hayer. And Carolyn Hayer, she is the executive director of the statewide Parent Advocacy Network. She has been in the thick of things. SPAN, that's the acronym for Statewide Parent Advocacy Network. It does national work and is very involved in the disability justice movement with the power of Black and brown parents and disabled people leading the work. Ms. Hayer has been working in the field of advocacy for over 30 years. Y'all, you see her picture, you think she's only 30 years old, so she must have started coming out the womb. As a parent, having an adult with autism who has successfully navigated the challenges of transition to adulthood. She brings both personal and professional experience to her work. She serves as the director of the Center for Parent Information and Resources, the CPIR. She's the director there. Carolyn and her team work to provide information and products to build capacity of close to 100 parent centers across the country who assist and serve families of youth with disabilities. Folks, let me tell you, she has served in leadership roles with the PTA, multiple education foundations, her local school board, the New Jersey State Special Education Advisory Council, and a whole list of other places. She's Phi Delta Kappa, Delta Nu chapter. She, ladies, folks, listeners, Ms. Hayer is everything that you could possibly want in an advocate for those dealing with disabilities. Welcome on your maiden voyage, Carolyn Hayer.
Thank you. I am beyond thrilled, excited, and mostly honored to be here with you all today. I appreciate the opportunity and am looking forward to our discussion and conversation. It's exciting to be here, and thank you for the invite and for that introduction. I'm kind of like, who is that? But okay.
No. It is our pleasure. It's our pleasure. We can't say enough about our guests. I just wanted to point out to everybody that you know that we, the Transformative Justice Coalition, that we train at least 100 young people to be voting rights advocates every year. Can't wait to do it again at the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference this year in September. And one of the most premier, beloved guests and lecturers and presenters is Dara Baldwin. Those young people still talk about you, Dara. They just love you. They love you. They love you. Thank you for all that you do. And because of her enlightenment of all of us about what's going on with the rights of people with disabilities, TJC and our advocacy has been right on it, trying to keep up with these fights. And last week, everybody remembered that this show featured Denise Lieberman from Missouri, and we talked about that horrible Arkansas United case that the Supreme Court refused to do anything about, that basically allows the Eighth Circuit to say to all those millions and millions of voters in 7 states in the country that if you have a claim of disability under Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act, that if you can't do anything about it. You cannot use the Voting Rights Act to enforce that section. You can't say that I have been denied the right to vote because there's no way for me to vote, that they're not allowing anybody to help me. There's no ramps. There's no ability for me to effectively vote, and that they're saying that they don't want disabled people here, just being violent about it, openly violent. And we called out the court for allowing this insistence by the Eighth Circuit that there's no private right of action under the Voting Rights Act and under Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act affecting people with disabilities. That was just wrong-headed and wrong. So this show continues that examination, because what is cruel and unjust? What is this hidden national agenda to exclude the rights of people with disabilities? So we're going to get into that, right, Daryl, as we open up our questioning of our amazing guests. Dara, thanks again for joining our show. Welcome back. How would you describe this Trump administration's policy agenda regarding people with disabilities?
Oh boy, that's a very question. But no, thank you for what you're doing and for getting this message out. It is so important for us, for people to understand and know what's going on. And you have to take it from a historic view. We continue to tell people you need to vet and to look at people and who they are. So let's start with Stephen Miller, right, who is in the White House, who is leading this push and this fight against so much hatred, against so many groups of people, and also the Trump family, right? Like Donald Trump's family himself, his family, his nucleus family, let me say that, right? Him, his wife, his children, have been horrible to people with disabilities, even his own family. And I say his deal is because he has a brother who has a son with disabilities, right? His nephew that he doesn't claim and has treated horribly and has institutionalized, right? Even though they are a wealthy family where that child could have grown up in their home and been with them, his brother died and left this child to be raised by this Trump family. So he doesn't know what's going on there. And then with Stephen Miller, what people don't understand is his disdain and hatred for immigrants stems from his disdain and hatred of disabled folks. Stephen Miller, for those of you who don't know about me, I worked for many years on the Hill in Congress, meaning working around policy. In one specific office who consistently gave us trouble and consistently gave us issues, but, let me say us, meaning black and brown disabled people, but the white disabled community loved him. And if you read my book, Could Be a Problem, you'll know about what I'm talking about here. And that was Senator Jeff Sessions, who was a Republican for Alabama when he was in office. And guess who was his deputy chief of staff and his legislative leader? Stephen Miller. And people forget in this town, people forget, in this town, people don't leave. They just stay around. They come back. They reiterate themselves in some other space. Let us not forget Jeff Sessions also moved to be Attorney General of this country and did some horrible things under 45 administration when Trump was 45th president, right? And Stephen Miller was right there. And Stephen Miller has really depended upon and moved upon the Great Replacement Theory, which is from 1924 Immigration Act, where they basically, back then they were saying that they had a quota and a system on non-Europeans who could come into this country. And it also included disabled people and eugenics. And it is a doctrine that was used by the Germans, and Adolf Hitler himself loved the Immigration Act of 1924 from this country and used it in Nazi Germany, right, and with eugenics and things that were happening there. And so this stems back to there, and it stems from the ugly laws. If you read my book, I'll tell you about it, 1896, where it said disabled people are not allowed to be in public spaces. Listen to what I said. That meant they weren't allowed to go to school. They weren't allowed to go to church. They weren't allowed to go to the park. They weren't allowed to be out in public. And so it has been a doctrine and a way in which this country has put disabled people. You were born with a disability, or if we figured it out later in your life, you were thrown into an institution and you were not considered human. And it is why that ghost still exists in the hatred and what is happening not only in our laws, in DOJ, because remember, that did not even go to the Supreme Court. That is a memo from the Department of Justice, which is a department that is supposed to protect all people in the United States, not just American citizens, all people in the United States, and is a ghost that is going through our Supreme Court system.
Wow. Daryl, before we move to the next question, I just want to remind people, when Daryl was talking about the ugly laws, remember August 11th of 2025. Many people have forgotten what happened that day. On that day, President Trump announced that he was going to wipe out all the, quote, homeless encampments around Washington, D.C., that he was going to drive everybody out because what? They looked bad. They were disgusting. He could not take seeing these kinds of people on the streets of his what he wanted to be a beautiful city. Isn't that the same theory there at play? Because so much of the homeless are disabled.
That is correct. You are correct. And I'm calling in from D.C. I have to say D.C. Stay Hood, whatever I'm on. And now free D.C. Because also on August 11th is when he put armed soldiers in our streets. And we still have them here. 5,000 armed soldiers are here. And you are correct. Stephen Miller used the ugly laws to say, because they, majority of homeless or unhoused people are disabled people.
Precisely. And that's what people miss, are these confluences and what we call intersections of different issues. Daryl?
Daryl, when I listen to all of this, and I think about the impact that these memos and these policies are having on the disabled community, and it comes out in your book. It's one thing when they go after the disabled community, but it's the disparate impact that it has when it comes to the African American disabled community. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, sure, of course. And Carolyn, good to be with you on here. I didn't get to say that, and everyone, so you know I'm a proud member of FAN's board and the treasurer of the board. But, all right, and yes, exactly what you're talking about. When we tell people, when you hear the statistics around disabled people, it's usually including white folks, right? That's a statistical analysis. And the measurement for us is double it for Black and brown folks, triple it for indigenous disabled community.
Wow.
In fact, what we're talking about right now when it comes to institutionalization, the data is there. More Black and brown, mostly Black people are institutionalized for many different reasons. And it is why we also, with this intersectional conversation, Barbara, you bring up, why many of us who do this work in disability justice are Black liberationists and abolitionists, right? And push the abolitionist movement to not only include closing jails and prisons, right? We say close any place holds a body in bondage. And that is usually Black and brown folks. At a higher level, Black and brown children are treated horribly, the youth, and Carolyn will speak more about this when it comes to school, right? And when it comes to transition and getting out in life, Black and brown people, specifically Black disabled people, are left out of the legislation that is put forward. Again, let me go back to Senator Jeff Sessions, who was the sponsor of what is called the ABLE Act, and you can look it up, ABLE, just like it sounds. But it's a financial bill. It's a financial law, now, that really helps disabled people, specifically around funding that they need, emergency funding, money that they wouldn't need, and they get the money from their families. I bring that up because when this bill was going on is when me and Stephen Miller got into it, because it protects white families. And when you look at how they rolled out the ABLE Act, they only went to white conferences, right? There was no information that was put in multiple languages, right? We were like, what about the communities of the Latin community, put it in Spanish, and the Chinese and the Asian community, let's put it in multiple languages for them so that they could learn about this program and help their children and help their youth. And it was refused, right? It was pushed back because they were like, Black and brown people don't save money. They don't need this. They don't need financial assistance.
Wow.
So they're constantly taken from the government. So this is the concept why we created disability justice and why disability rights is centered so much on racism.
Wow.
Carolyn.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Daryl.
Carolyn, it's really interesting because one of the things that people begin to wonder about is with this policy that the Trump administration is laying out, it really greenlights states to be able to just institutionalize and not necessarily let families and provide money for families to care for the kids and children and folks within their family and within the home. Can you share with us how that impacted students and your thoughts about this policy decision?
Yes, happy to. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dara, for the shout out. And I want to encourage everybody to get your book. It's a great read. But to answer your question, I think the biggest concern for me as a parent and a professional is what they're trying to do in terms of the Olmstead decision, which really affirmed that segregation is really a form of discrimination, and therefore it makes living in your community your legal right to be there. I'm not an attorney, but I think that we can't forget that, and as we try to address these changes that are coming down the pike, we know that community-based supports are not, they're superior to institutionalization. Let's look at the dollars and cents. Institutionalization is extremely expensive, but more importantly, let's look at the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. And the best place for them to be is in their communities with their families and allowing them the opportunity to have autonomy, to have dignity and quality of life, to make their own personal choices to the best of their ability, and to be a part of the community. The serious problem that I have with all of this is the insinuation that people with disabilities have no value and therefore they need to be put away and not seen. And that couldn't be further from the truth. They need supports, but given the appropriate supports, they can do amazing things. And I think it's also important to note that race and disability cannot be addressed separately. People live with both of those things, that intersectionality. And to Dara's point and the points made earlier, we in the Black community obviously suffer all of those things tenfold that everybody else with disabilities has to deal with. And so, we really have to deal with this collectively, and that we must be intentional about strategies that we can use to center Black disabled individuals and their families to make sure they have access to the supports that they need.
Carolyn, that's so profound to really point out that we need to center. I mean, that's one of the interventions, one of the strategies for fighting what's happening right now. Can you tell us what percentage of the population of people with disabilities in the United States is African American?
It's approximately 1 in 7 people with disabilities in this country are Black. And everywhere you look, I actually did some research before coming on here, and I got several different answers. But that's kind of the same. 25 to 30% Black. The Black community is dealing with more challenges than other folks in this country with disabilities. And it's a disproportionate impact on our community.
Yes. And I see it all the time.
Barbara?
Yes, go ahead, Dara.
I just want to real quick add to what Carolyn said, because she said she did the data right. She looked it up, and it's multiple times. Let us be clear, right? It is very difficult to put a measurement on how many disabled people there are in the country because of the way the census is done. Let me just be clear about that so people understand that. And because it's done every 10 years, right? But also when people fill out the form, they may not feel like they have a disability right then, right? You have episodic disabilities where your back is not hurting or your arm, or you can't breathe that morning, but you fill out and say, nope, I don't have a disability. But you do. So I just want people to understand that. And the second part of that is after COVID and the things that happened to Black people through COVID, there are now onsets of COVID disabilities that people don't think is their disability, but it is. And until our community understands and knows what disability is, those numbers are very much high. I don't want to say Carolyn's wrong, but like she said, there are 2, 3 different numbers, 1 in 7. Some people say 2 in 10. There is, what we will say, and how we really get numbers, are children in school when they are identified, hopefully, by some really smart people, if you have early intervention, and how we identify people we know, right, and we talk to and we're engaged with as a community. I will say those numbers that are reported are low.
And I thank you, Dara, and I agree. And it's also because it's self-report. So to your point, we're a community of taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. So when someone asks that question, we don't count ourselves in that number. And then it's also how are the numbers that are collected, how are they reported? That's skewed as well.
And I can relate to that because my father, when he was a child, had an X dropped on his foot. And it gave him a club foot, and he always had a very distinctive limp and a very distinctive disability, but he worked hard every day as a labor unionist, and he never, ever classified himself as disabled. And I was really, amazed by that because I didn't think about it until I myself had a temporary severe disability for almost a year. And it was the first time I really understood what he had gone through and how much he consciously tried to not admit to it. So it is a problem in our community, and thank you for pointing that out so much. I want to talk back about what is going on overall with this administration and its disability agencies, and what's happening deeper than that, right? There is an ideology at play here. It's the ideology of eugenics that you mentioned, carried over from Nazi Germany. It's the ideology of white supremacy, which you mentioned in the Great White Replacement Theory. But where is that coming from? Isn't there more than just the administration? Aren't there other actors, ideologies, tech bros, and others involved in this effort to somehow retrogress on the rights of people with disabilities? And that's for either one of you to answer.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, I will go ahead and start, and then Dara, of course, would appreciate your follow-up. I think the most important thing that we need to do is educate our community. So calls like this are so important. My belief is this administration is, and is my personal belief that I'm speaking from, exactly what they said. Go back to the way things used to be. Every action that they take is reflective of that. Underlying goal. Maybe they thought it was great back in the 50s, but that's the push that I feel. So the concern is, in a very short amount of time, progress that has taken 50 years for us to move forward has been stripped away in 18 months or whatever, and more on the way. And so I feel that, and if you think about it, that's what this is. Everything going back to the way it used to be, which was good in somebody's mind, but was never good for us, for sure. And not just that, and what will it take to recover from this? These were all very hard-fought, hard-won achievements. The Voting Rights Act, Homestead Act, all of these things that are so critically important today. And I think that many of our young folks, we need to make sure they realize these things came with a fight, and it's going to take a fight to maintain them and or rebuild them. Because I feel it's not even about maintenance in some places. We're talking about rebuilding what's already been stripped away from us.
Wow. And I just, Daryl, when I look at this, what's going on nationwide, I can't help but think about this battle that's been going on with the president and Congress over the Affordable Housing Act. How would that act affect any of this? Because the president said he doesn't give an F about the act. I think I'm being nice. I think he used another S word. But in any event, we know that he said that he wants to save that so that he can repress people's right to vote instead. But tell us, what would that act? How would that act affect people with disabilities?
Yeah, sure. So in reference to everything that Carolyn and I have been talking about, specifically around the Olmstead v. Lois Curtis, let's not forget Lois Curtis and that story of this black woman who wanted to get out of an institution, and why you have that Supreme Court case that says you can't institutionalize people with disabilities. So when you're getting people out of institutions and you want people with disabilities to be in the community, they must have housing, right? It's like the chicken before the egg: housing, employment, education. It's the same for other formerly incarcerated folks. Like when we get our incarcerated out, they need housing. Foster care children, when they move and transition to adult, everybody needs a place to live. And so that's why this would affect that. And this is why it's also connected. Like all the things that they do has an ending, right? They want to have eugenics. They don't want disabled people in the streets or in the community. So don't give them housing. And the Fair Housing Act did not include disabled people, but we was added later. Not when it was first done 50-plus years ago. Now it was added later. And also under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, housing and those things were included under Title II with federal funds. If you get federal funds, you have to give a civil human right to disabled folks, right? And I want people to understand and know that next month, tomorrow, starts Disability Pride Month. So please look at our organizations and talk to people about disabilities. But in housing, there's a section in housing called Section 811, which is specifically created for disabled people to get housing vouchers, to come into the community and live in, hopefully, for our site, it's accessible and affordable housing. And that bill that was done, shout out to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, who I just came off of their board, been on their board for 9 years, but has fought to make sure, because disabled folks usually have low income, that they have housing in safe communities, places where they can also receive their services, right? So they will live in a building, maybe around neighbors and have people right in the community, but also in the building will be their physical therapist, will be their occupational therapist, will be their psychiatrist or social worker who needs to. So they don't have to go far to travel to get to those meetings and those medical appointments they need, right? So we have what's called community housing. We have Section 811 housing, and those vouchers are few and far between because the federal government has for many years, unfortunately now, even under other administrations, did not fully fund Section 811. And this housing bill that would have passed, that he chose not to sign, let us be clear, this man specifically chose not to sign this bill, would help a lot, thousands of people who, again, let me bring up COVID, now have disabilities, but also our veterans who come back from fighting in the community in these wars that he's now started, and also just being a veteran yourself, but also our youth and teens who are disabled, who want to grow up and have their own apartment and be their own self-identified person and doing their own decisions and getting married. That's a whole nother issue we can talk about.
Yeah.
So housing is just as important to disabled people as it is to every other group in this country, because if you don't have a place where you can rest your head and eat your food and commune with other people, you don't live well. And we want people to live well. And so that is a part of this deinstitutionalization, is most definitely housing. And it is so good to see finally, again, we created housing justice movement that really focuses on disabled people and having housing. And the last thing I'll say is, if you don't think disabled people need housing, okay, fine. But let me be clear to you all out there who are aging, like myself, there will be a time in your life where you will need the accessibilities that are given to disabled people to live in your home, to stay in your home, so that you don't have to go to a nursing home, so that you don't have to be institutionalized. And we are all in this together. So look at it through that lens, that if you want to age where you live, then you need to make sure that these housing funding and housing offerings are continued and go throughout the community so that you can receive it one day.
Thank you. And Daryl, I just wanted to point out one other thing real quickly, and then please pick up. Carolyn, my understanding is that because the president did not sign this bill, it means that the bill sits for 10 days before it becomes law. Is that correct? That it still will become law?
Yes.
Okay, great. Daryl?
Well, we've been talking about this, and Daryl, one of the things that is swimming around in my head right now, and I'm just wondering, and I think our listeners would also benefit from this, when we talk about institutionalizing someone, what exactly does that mean? Is this like is it like a high-rise building? Is it a house? When we talk about institutionalizing, what does it mean? Who's running the institution that they're going into?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn, because that is what Span does. Real quick, there are multiple ways in which people are institutionalized. And let's talk about Black and brown communities, because that's who we are here. You can have private institutionalization where people pay money and pay good money to have their families in a nursing home. That's probably very well taken care of and done well. But let us not forget Paris Hilton, who just got here and let her story be known. Her parents sent her to a troubled teen place and paid big money where she was sexually assaulted, right? Where she was treated horribly, and now she's fighting with those troubled teen places, right? So let's remember these kinds of things. But then there are also mostly state-funded places and homes where people, mostly Black and brown folks, are sent to. And those places are not kept up well. Those places are places where people are abused and treated horribly. And I'm going to bring forth again, I'll talk about COVID and the disgraceful Governor Cuomo and how he sat there and lied about how many people died in those state-run nursing homes.
Lord.
The number was triple what he kept saying, that there was nothing wrong. And so those are the places where there are problems. You can also go and look up Willowbrook, Willow Brook. It sounds like that. That is one of the first cases where Geraldo Rivera did his investigative report when he was a good investigative reporter. And it is the first case of someone wearing a pin camera and going around in the horrific state of institution where people did not receive sunlight, they weren't fed, they were naked, food is thrown on the floor. We have more horrific cases of institutionalization than we do of good institutionalization in this country. And you can read several Supreme Court cases, several state court cases where we have used the Olmstead v. Lois Curtis case to shut down these horrific facilities. But I'm going to let Carolyn also talk about what stands and why we do that work around that. So, Carolyn, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dara. And to your point, they're institutions, but they're also called residential care facilities. Makes it sound a little better, right? And they're operated by a mix of state and or federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, some for-profit, healthcare corps. The issue is really around the oversight and how that funding, how they're funded, how the placements are funded. And it's typically the disability agency at the state level that has oversight for many of the residential care facilities. They're modeled after nursing homes. They are not focused on people being out in the community and doing the best for themselves. They're often, and I'm glad you mentioned Willowbrook, so if you can stomach it, you should investigate that, because that's what we do not want to go back to, where people are just housed and not viewed as people. That's the problem.
My Lord.
So they're behind closed doors, locked doors. They can't leave. You can't get in, and not a place that we want to, again, go back to. The other challenge is for families, which is where SPAN does most of our work, is as parents of individuals and adults with disabilities are aging, that is our primary concern. We used to think kids were little, what happens when they graduate? Now we think, what happens when we die? And who's going to take care of our loved ones? And that's often the only option that people will have. And there's not enough spots, even if you want it. There's a waiting list to get into the horrible place. This is why community-based supports are so important. That's where people are going to live their best lives, with their families. But their families need support to be able to help them and assist them appropriately. Throwing people back into institutions and pretending that is care is a lie, first of all, and in no one's best interest. And in reality, most people want to support their loved one with a disability, but they need financial support to do that.
Because I hear of some states, I think Wisconsin is one of those states, where the state actually pays some portion of money, parents or loved ones, to take care of people with disabilities, and to try to offset some of their lost income from not being able to work or providing the care for the person with the disability. And I just wonder, with the administration coming out with this strong position, saying that they prefer that they just institutionalize them, that lose the wraparound services that are available for people with disabilities. And as you've indicated, we're not just talking about people that may have some psychological disability, but these are people that their minds and everything are there, but they just can't physically take care of themselves. So it just seems that at all turns in this road, that this policy is simply horrible. But as Barbara said, it's consistent with what we see coming from this administration, right? What they want to do to the migrants that they're saying are undocumented. Just warehouse them. Whatever you do with them is fine. They don't have any rights. It seems to be coming from this administration, Carolyn. Where am I wrong on this?
You're not wrong. You are absolutely right. And what we've been saying for the past year is don't watch what's happening to immigrants and think you're not next on the list. And that's how I feel now. They're coming for people with disabilities. Point is all about at some point in time.
No, and you're correct. No, correct. And Dara, you're correct. There are some states. We have some great states. We're in New Jersey. We're seeing it. Like, we have some good states that do really good work, and not the whole entire state. Let me be clear about you about that too, or about the people. But I think back to the conversation. I think Carolyn said it about what MAGA stands for. Right, this administration and this group of people who are doing this work have a mantra, MAGA, Make America Great Again, and that is to go back to when white folks were the important people. White folks could do whatever they wanted. We see it in multiple areas. Of course, the immigration community and what is happening. Please, again, I said free D.C. You don't want to know how many people have been snatched off the street here, how many now we have foster children and orphan children who don't know where either one or both their parents are. We've had actual teenagers who've been taken off the street, right? So, yes, but it's also if you're noticing, if you even are on social media and you see the boldness of people being racist in spaces that are supposed to be safe, right? You go into the grocery store and they just come right out and use the N-word and call you all kinds of things and nobody can, right? Like there's civil society anymore. We see it in TV and newscasters who say whatever they want to say on the news and sit in spaces where producers no longer take you off of TV because you just said this racist, hateful thing about a group of people, because you can say and do whatever you want. And so we see it seeping through our community and our society. And as I said, if you're going to do it to one group of people, it's going to happen to all groups of people. And so the hatred of disabled people has always been around, just like the hatred of black people, hatred of indigenous folks. I think it's even more particular that people understand that on July 26th, we will celebrate the 36th anniversary of this community having their civil and human rights. So understand that. Wow. This community did not get the right to vote until 1990, right? So when white women, 1913, we got the right to vote. No, white women got the right to vote, right? Black women, right? Indigenous women didn't, and neither did disabled women, right? Yeah. They did not get the right to vote till 1990. They had no civil rights until 1990. And here we are, a generation is 25 years, right? So one generation and a half, right, because we're at the 60th, right? You are trying to take away the civil and human rights of these people. And that is where we are in this country.
My. So let's talk about quickly what can be done about this, because Congress can act. This horrible policy of trying to reinstitutionalize people, Congress could, in fact, block that by some legislation. Tell us, what do people need to do right now to make a difference in this fight to make sure that the rights of the disabled are respected?
Go ahead, Carolyn. Tell them what SPAN is doing, and then I'll add on a national level.
Okay, great. So SPAN is one of our primary functions is to educate families about their rights and their roles within multiple systems in this country. I think that the bottom line and what we have to educate people about is people have to first understand that our society doesn't value people with disabilities. They don't value people of color. And so without that, it's okay to do all of these things. So first we have to get people to recognize what we're fighting. Yes, we're fighting these policies, but deep down the issue is there's no value for our lives, for our people with disabilities. And there are three big pillars, I think, that we need to address. So one thing that this push for institutionalization does is it is because they view people with disabilities as people that need to be fixed, right? They don't accept them as they are. And so, therefore, we need this medical model to fix you. We're going to do something to fix you. And part of that is we teach a lot around self-advocacy. And the strong advocates, people with disabilities, tell you, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to be fixed. I need to have access is what I need, and then I can do what I need to do. And Dara alluded earlier to another critical piece is the economic situation. She spoke about the ABLE Act. But this country, people who have disabilities are relegated to poverty. If you're eligible because of your disability to access Social Security, you can't have more than $2,000 in your name. Why?
That's right.
You've been able to have a place to put money so you can live. And then just society as a whole understanding that disability shouldn't be perceived as this negative connotation, right? You are who you are. Be proud of that. And Dara mentioned earlier, Disability Pride Month starts tomorrow. And why is it? Because we recognize that people with disabilities, and someone else's point earlier, all kinds of disabilities, right? Physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, people that are struggling for any number of reasons don't need to be fixed. They need to be accepted, and they need to be provided opportunities where they will shine. And that's where we need to get some conversation, in my opinion, and then rallying together as well. So thank you for this opportunity, because conversation is where that starts.
Thank you so much. And Carolyn, we are about to start closing our show. How do people get in touch with you? How do they keep up with the great work that SPAN is doing and support that work?
Thank you so much. The best thing is to visit our website. We're at www.spanadvocacy.org. Our phone number is 973-642-8100. And our work is really to promote equity, inclusion, and really improving outcomes for across the lifespan, people with disabilities, children, youth, and young adults with disabilities, special health care needs, and just making sure that they have strong family, community, and system support so that they can live to their greatest potential.
Okay, and Dara, you're about to start your book tour. Hey, to be a problem. All about your book. How do people follow you, and how do people get in contact with you?
Sure, no problem. Real quick, things to do. We don't need a law. We have the ADA. Call your U.S. Department of Justice, which is 202-514-2000, and tell them to reverse this memo today. Call your congressman, both of them, both your senators and your U.S. House of Representatives, and tell them they need to send a memo to DOJ and say, stop this. This must end. We don't need legislation. Again, 202-514-2000, and then also tag them on every social media because they're on there too. But thank you for this opportunity. The book tour is starting on next month. I am so excited for this Pride Month. It's called Let's Talk About the Problem Book Tour. I will be on the West Coast, so look for me, Seattle, Portland, Oakland, San Francisco, and LA. And please go to my website, darabaldwin.com, to find out all the details under events. It's there. And I am looking forward to meeting many of you out there. And then I will be coming across the United States over the next 7 to 8 months.
Wow. We're going to have you on the show to tell people about how that tour is going, and tell people again about the title of your book and how they can purchase it real quick.
Sure. To Be a Problem, a Black woman's survival in the racist disability rights movement. You can find it at most bookstores, or you can go to solidstate.com, which is a Black-owned bookstore here in D.C. that is selling it. So please buy my book, and I look forward to talking to all of you out there. To Be a Problem.
All right. And Daryl, there's a couple of announcements we need to make, right? One is that we want to remind everybody to make sure that you are part of the good trouble. Come on now. Let's live up to John Lewis's invocation for all of us to fight for good trouble, to make sure that everyone has a right to vote. Go to goodtroublelivesOn.org, because we will be having a weekend of activations beginning July 17th, all the way through the 18th, all the way through the 19th. We're going to teach, reach, and preach We're going to make sure people know about their rights. We're going to register voters. We're going to check voter registration. We're going to do a whole lot of other things. Please go to goodtroubleliveson.org because you might want to host an event, and we want to help you to do so in your local community. So we are excited about that. The other thing, we just want to remind people that the Essence Festival will be starting soon. Black Voters Matters will have a platform available for people to come and learn so much. Friday on Saturday, Angela Rye is doing a major session at 4:15 on Saturday. Friday night, there's a Justice Revival at the Rock of Ages Church with Jamal Bryant, Freddie Haynes speaking. That is going to be so amazing. So I give it to you, Daryl. Take us home.
Thank you, Barbara. Folks, what can we say? Big shout out of thanks to Dara Baldwin. Catch her on her tour as she goes around. Go to darabaldwin.com. Let me tell you, folks, it's time to get off the sidewalk, get off the street, get into the street, get in some good trouble, make your way to a polling place when it's time. Until next Tuesday noon, Eastern Standard Time. Peace, everybody.
Peace.